Many of us know the story of King Arthur and Guinevere. They were to be married. And so there was a banquet they held in the great banquet hall to celebrate their engagement. And the knights began to fight. They began to fight who could sit closest to King Arthur. And it got to a point that it even turned into physical violence. When Merlin got them all calmed down, he said, "The night of the wedding banquet, we will take care of this problem." And we know the great story of when those doors flew open at the banquet hall. There was a round table made of stone and wood, and that no one would have more power than anyone, all would be equal. They all knew who the king was, but all the knights would be equal and have an equal voice. I always loved King Arthur stories. I read them throughout middle school and high school. I love the movies that have to do with this time period, except it didn't work, right? There was always that knight who thought, but I should be second in command, really. I should have more power than the rest of these guys. I should, and then fights ensue, and that makes for great stories and great movies. It's difficult to listen to these words of Jesus about being humble, about not being the one who's recognized. It's difficult when he speaks these words. Jesus says, when you're invited by someone to a wedding banquet, do not sit at the place of honor. Don't we strive for that? Don't we strive to have places of honor in our life? David Lose reminds us that in that time period, honor was everything. Social status was everything. I'm not sure it's that much different today. But if you were invited, especially to a meal, and you were asked to move from a place of position, of honor, to a lower position, it didn't just affect your humility that day. It affected your business, how your family was treated out of the marketplace, how you were treated in your entire life in the synagogue. And if the opposite happened, if you were asked to move to a place of prestige within 24 hours, you would have business dealings that were never open to you before. We are reminded of how important it is in our own lives to name drop. How we love to show people who we are on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and Snapchat, to show people, look at who I am and look at who I know. Look at what I've accomplished. Now, there's nothing wrong with showing people who we are unless we're always trying to be something we are not. What an opportunity Jesus has here to say, you're all children of God. You're all invited to the communion table that is a round table. What more could you want than being called child of God? There's nowhere to climb. That's it. You're a child of the King. What more could you ever want? And why do you spend so much time putting people in categories and trying to fit in and trying to be welcomed at places where you're already welcomed as a child of God? One of the things that trips us up in this passage is the word humility. The word humility comes from the same word as human. Comes from the word hume, which is earth, stuff of the earth. We're made in the image of God, all of us. We are made as children of the King, in the image of the King. But if we look at humility as self-deprecation, that is not what the word means. It means to know where we fit in this kingdom of God, where we fit into God's power. Or as C.S. Lewis wrote, humility is not thinking less of yourself, it's thinking of yourself less. What freedom is found if we think of ourselves less? If when we go to an event we don't think, oh, I wonder if everyone knows who I am, or I wonder if they know I'm friends with the mayor, or I'm friends with the bishop, or whatever the social class we're trying to impress. What freedom do we find? Jesus again. But when you give a banquet, invite the poor, the crippled, the lame, and the blind, and you will be blessed, because they cannot repay you. How difficult and how liberating. I don't have to be always vying for position. I don't always have to be screaming out, notice me, notice me. I don't have to fit in. I'm already made in the image of God, as are you, as are movie stars, as are famous people throughout the world. We are already equal, and trying to impress each other is pointless and exhausting. Barbara Brown Taylor if we host suppers with surprising guest lists, perhaps we will see past our own reflections in the mirror to the God we did not make up. I think Jesus is trying to point this out with this parable. These banquets you're having are for the God you made up. How much more liberating. And think of your own life experiences. How many times have you seen someone, maybe a street person, maybe someone at work, and your first impression was, are you kidding me? They're going to talk to me? And then a story unfolds, or you find how much you have in common with them, or you find a friend that you never expected to find that day, that you find we have so much more in common than we do not, and you almost missed it because you were so busy worrying about your social status. Now, I really know I'm preaching to the choir today. I know most of you really enjoy being behind the scenes. I know you enjoy serving people. But I think we all struggle with being noticed, with saying, but I know so-and-so, or I better climb the corporate ladder of my job or my social standing, or maybe not be in the social status as my parents. We struggle with these things, forgetting we are the human family already found at the round table. Children seem to understand this. Now, I think most of us think of 2-year-olds saying, it's mine, or collaborate each other to get the toy they want. But they can be taught and understand collaboration and cooperation probably better than we can, because we have been so indoctrinated with pull yourself up by your bootstraps, and the one with the most toys finishes first. There was a study that Jason Marsh tells about in psychological science. There was a study done. The study is broken into 2 experiments involving a total of 112 3-year-old children. An equal number of boys and girls, split into teams of 2. In both experiments, 2 children were left alone in an observation room. Each child had to work with his or her partner to get a reward. 4 identical gummy bears, 4 identical stickers, or 4 of another prize. It was trapped in the back of a long, transparent box. When the kids simultaneously pulled on each end of a rope, they could bring the prizes to the front of the box and grab the reward through a hole. If only one kid pulled the rope, the prizes remained out of reach. Sometimes the box had 2 holes, one on either side, enabling each child to pull out 2 prizes, easy and fair. But even when the box had only a single hole, the child who got the reward first shared it equally with his partner in the vast majority of cases, more than 70% of the time. In roughly 80% of these cases of cooperation, the sharing was passive, meaning that one child took what was fair, 2 prizes, and left the other 2 for his or her teammate. Other times, one child would take 2 prizes and actively give 2 to the other child, or would tell the child to collect his or her fair share if he or she neglected to do so at first. Rarely was there any arguing, and physical conflicts were almost non-existent. This was all generally true regardless of what the prize was, though in the first experiment, the researchers found that children were more likely to share gummy bears than stickers. So why did these children seem so willing to share? According to the study's authors, the answer might lie in the fact that kids had to work together in order to earn the reward. Only by collaborating were they able to get their prizes, and their collaboration evoked this burgeoning sense of fairness. The psychologist in charge from Harvard, Felix Warneke, says, the situation of peers jointly collaborating toward a mutual outcome might exemplify the fundamental context in which a sense of equality emerges. We know this. We know this from our own life experiences. Those times where maybe you came to serve something at St. Mark's, or maybe went to the banquet, and you went thinking, really, why did I sign up to do this? And then that sense of cooperation when you got there. Or when you got there, you heard somebody's life story that was way harder than I had to run kids to 3 different events today, and we don't have any milk in the fridge. We find that we are equal because we're all made in the image of God. And when we quit spending so much time, some psychologists predict or think that we spend 80 to 90% of our time trying to impress our neighbors. That's a lot of energy. That's a lot of effort for no results. Because in the end, we know that the people and leaders we respect are those who are humble, those who are authentic, those who are trustworthy. Humility is not about self-deprecation. It's about knowing who we are, and we are a child of God. How does this look? Because children aren't the only ones who can do this. We saw at the Olympics when the U.S. runner and the New Zealand runner were both knocked to the ground. And they both helped each other. First one encouraging with a tap on the shoulder and helping her to stand. And the other encouraging her to the finish line. We've seen this in Orlando with the healthcare system. Orlando Healthcare has forgiven the medical costs of every victim who survived the massacre on June 12th. Over $5 million, and no one has been sent a bill. They are going to either incur the cost themselves, they are looking for donors, they are finding ways so they do not have to send a bill to one person. They have suffered enough already, they say. We will be there for them and with them. But maybe these are easy because they're strangers or they're one-time moments. We are called to be humble with each other, even one another under this roof. If we have a conflict with someone, even if we don't like someone, instead of turning the other way, can we reach out a hand when we share the peace and say, "The peace of the Lord be with you"? And maybe we don't believe it in that moment, but notice what we say, "The peace of the Lord." Not my hang-up, not my grudge, not my anger, the peace of the Lord. And we trust in that to hold us and bind us together as we know that all are welcome to the table. Amen. I'd like to close with a prayer by Daniel Lord. Loving God, let me have too deep a sense of humor to be proud. Let me know my absurdity before I actually act absurdly. Let me realize that when I am humble, I am most human, most truthful, and most worthy of your serious consideration.